Vicky Ward, welcome back to Mea Culpa. Always good to see you, my friend. So much going on. You know, since I saw you last, even more is going on. So we're just going to jump right into it. Vicky, let's start with the shocker, right? An Epstein transparency bill. Something powerful people have buried for decades. Literally just sailed through the Senate and Trump's desk. From your vantage point, what the heck happened here?
I think it's really actually quite simple, Michael. It's called looming midterms. and I think a lame duck presidency, and you've got a lot of people in the House of Representatives and in the Senate who are up for re-election next year, and they cannot afford to be on the wrong side of this, no matter what your politics are. Jeffrey Epstein is a line, I think, and should be a line for everybody. You know, his sex crimes against children are something that all Americans should want to be sure that we never, ever see again, propped up in the way that he was by the elites, by the establishment, by, what people refer to as the deep state, not just of this country, but of many others. And so I think that you saw the MAGA divide. You saw that at the end of the day, there are all these Republicans who realize that they just won't get back into office next year if they didn't support this bill. I mean, I think it's as simple as that.
Wow. Well, let me ask you this then, because were you as surprised as I was that MAGA Mike Johnson had literally no clue what Chuck Schumer was pulling? I mean, he practically got rolled while standing there smiling. I mean, with his makeup and his rosy cheek, MAGA Mike was sitting there, okay, fine, we're going to get amendments to this bill, and it's going to prevent the release of documents or some documents or parts and here and there. And the next thing you know, Chuck Schumer literally goes running in with the bill and gets the unanimous consent by the Senate, now, of course, bringing it to the president's desk. What does that say about MAGA Mike Johnson's competence?
Well, I must say, Michael, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was really puzzled, because I watched Mike Johnson today. I watched that press conference, and he said in it that he had reached out to his counterpart in the Senate, John Thune. So I did think, okay, now there's going to be a hold up there. So I think, I am here. I mean, John Thune, I would love to know what the conversation between John Thune and Chuck Schumer.
Assuming there even was, by the way, assuming there even
was one.
Right.
But I mean, because you're right, Mike Johnson seemed extraordinarily confident that, he said, but again, you come back to, this is politics, Michael, it's politics. Mike Johnson was addressing, I thought, one person really in that press conference. He was addressing that press conference to Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. And he was hitting all the notes that Trump wanted him to hit about this being something that the Democrats should have done under Joe Biden. Why didn't they release the files then? That this was all the Democrats doing, and having sort of held out against it in the way that Trump had. I think Mike Johnson was trying to give himself cover for the fact that at the end of the day, he was going to vote in support of releasing the Epstein files.
Well, he actually had no choice. Right.
Well, as you know, one member of the House dissented, but but I think that, Mike Johnson was basically saying, yeah, well, I'm going to vote for this, but I'm going to vote for this because it's going to get held up in the Senate. And I think that was his get out of jail free card. I think that's what was going on.
I gotta be honest with you. I cannot imagine, because as the press caught this little schmuck walking up the stairs, heading to the state's dinner for Mohammed bin Salman. And we're going to get into a couple questions later in the show on Mohammed bin Salman. But, you could only, let me be clear, as somebody that sat by Trump's side for almost a decade and a half, I can't imagine, after all of the play that has taken place, shutting down government to prevent the vote, the refusal for like 60 days to swear in Adelita Grijalva, right? All to stop the vote, to become the 218th signature, yada, yada, yada. Now, MAGA Mike Johnson, this pipsqueak, has to show up and he has to face Donald Trump. And you know that Trump doesn't give a shit that he's at a state dinner. He don't give a shit if God himself came down from the heavens and was sitting between him and Melania. He's so fucking pissed that Mike Johnson failed, and failed in a miserable and in a stupid way. There's no doubt in my mind that he either did the gentlemanly thing and pulled him off to a side and then ripped him a new ass, or he did it in front of everybody. And I would say, because this is such a gigantic clusterfuck, that he did it in front of everyone, which kind of brings me to the question I want to ask you. If you would, walk my listeners through the mechanics here. I want them to fully understand just how bad MAGA Mike Johnson got played. How did Schumer manage to get this bill passed without a single amendment while MAGA Mike was seemingly asleep at the wheel?
Yeah, they did something. They didn't even put it to a vote, right? They rubber stamped it, which
they did put it to a vote. They just did a unanimous consent.
Well, right, but I mean, they didn't go through the performative aspects, right,
No.
of what we watched in the House, and they could have done. So they opted. I mean, this is really fast tracking. And, I'm guessing, Michael, I was very keen to talk to you about all this, because I don't think you and I, in all the years we've known each other, we've had so much to talk about. I'm not sure we've ever talked about Jeffrey Epstein. And I am, I began to wonder when the emails were released last week. It seemed clear to me that two things that I'd been skeptical about might possibly be true. And that was that Jeffrey Epstein believed two things. Now, they don't need to be true, but I think this is what Jeffrey Epstein believed. I think he believed that he had a window onto Donald Trump's finances for whatever reason, maybe advice he'd given him in the past to do with bankruptcy. He therefore thought he knew that Donald Trump had no disposable cash in the early 2000s. And that is why he had question marks when Donald Trump came out of nowhere and paid $45 million for this
for the Palm Beach property.
For the Palm Beach property, which Epstein had wanted. And that Epstein suspected something shady had gone down, whether it was money laundering, because as time would tell, a few years later, Trump sold that building for double the money to a Russian oligarch. And all of this obviously went through a company, shell company that Trump had created. So there's the insinuation there of money laundering. And then Epstein in an email to Michael Wolff raises the question of how Trump disclosed any of that on his tax returns. Did he disclose a capital gain? And given that we sort of know, I think by now, that on Trump's taxes, he declares all these losses, right? It's probably unlikely he declared the capital gain, but I don't know. So I think what I learned was that Jeffrey Epstein believed that he had something on Trump to do with Trump's money, not to do with Trump and sex, but to do with money.
See, I keep saying that on television, and I keep saying that on my Substack, and as well as here on Mea Culpa and elsewhere. And I get attacked a lot from the Democratic side? Why are you still protecting Trump? And it's funny, and I come back and my response is, telling the truth doesn't mean I'm bending the knee. It doesn't mean that I am protecting anybody. I do truly believe that Trump threw Jeffrey Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago right on his ass because he was a creep, and for probably other reasons as well, meaning, he was trying to poach employees, or he acted like a creep, as Trump said. I also have said I don't believe that these files will show Trump engaged in improper relations with children. Again, as a guy who's been by the guy's side
Well, I
for
think that's an
15 years.
important thing, Michael. My gut tells me the same thing.
I believe what Jeffrey Epstein thought he had on Trump, his get out of jail free card, was definitively financial, or
Yes.
maybe let's say it had to do with Trump's relationship to law enforcement.
Well,
There's
I think,
a whole slew
yes.
of these.
So the
But
other
it's
thing
not
that
sexual.
No. And I think look, Epstein was a complete bullshitter. No one knows that better than me. I had to deal with him lying to me on a daily basis back in 2002. But he had no reason that I know of to lie to Michael Wolff. So or actually to lie to Ghislaine Maxwell in 2011 when he writes that email about, have you noticed that Trump is the dog that hasn't barked? And what I began to wonder is something that Michael Wolff has told me in the past on the record, which is that Epstein believed that it was Trump who ratted him out.
Reported him to the FBI. Yes.
To the Palm Beach police.
Yeah.
And when I looked
FBI.
at when I looked at that email that Epstein sent to Ghislaine Maxwell in 2011, for me, I must say it was a moment where a sort of light bulb went off, and I was like, "Oh God!" So I'm not suggesting this is factual or true, but I think it backs up what Michael said, which is that this is what Epstein believed, and it might explain, therefore, why Epstein was so completely obsessed with Donald Trump. I was wondering what you made of that, given that these two guys had not spoken. I don't think, as far as all my reporting, nobody suggested to me that they've spoken since 2004 and the bad blood of that house sale. Were you surprised at how obsessed Jeffrey Epstein was with Donald Trump?
Sure. And based on those emails and the communications that were released, damn straight I was, to the point where, again, I think it's extremely important that, and I call for people to please take a step back, slow it down. Everybody has an opinion, and that's great. My grandpa used to always say, opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one, right? That doesn't make your opinion right. And just because you want it to be, sure, doesn't, again, make it right. Like, I've had people come to me and say, why would you say that Donald was, in your opinion, not sexually involved with any of these children? And I said, well, again, I stood by the man's side for a decade and a half, and I never saw. Well, what about the time that he hit on your 15-year-old daughter? I said, first of all, she was a distance away. All right. My daughter happens to be beautiful. Trump does not have great eyesight. Maybe he thought she was older. I don't know. Okay. When he saw her inappropriate, sure, let's just say that my daughter felt it was inappropriate. Or they bring up the email about Trump looking through the window at the young girls who were swimming in the pool. And I turned around and I said, okay, there's a difference between him looking through a window and actually physically touching anybody. I said, did you watch the Miss USA pageant? Some of those girls are 15 too, right?
Right.
So I said,
Michael,
I don't want to sort of cloud the conversation, but we need to talk about things that are criminal. Looking through a window at a bunch of girls who were playing in the swimming pool, all right, does not commit a crime. It doesn't constitute a crime.
No, and by the way, Michael, Trump actually talked about that. In 2009, he freely gave an interview to Brad Edwards, the lawyer, the Florida lawyer who was representing the survivors after Jeffrey Epstein's non-prosecution agreement and plea deal, on the grounds that it was illegal. They formed a class action suit, and Brad Edwards was their attorney, pro bono, I might add. I mean, now he's very famous. He wasn't then. And he was doing this because he was horrified by the story.
More famous than you, Vicky? I'm just trying. I want my audience to be able to gauge this
at this point. But Brad Edwards is a good guy. He has written about this in his book Relentless Pursuit, which I highly recommend that people read. And he said that in 2009 he started to phone. He reached out to all the well-known bold-faced names that Trump was known, that Epstein was known to hang around with. And he actually was subpoenaing them all. And he reached out to Alan Garton, who I'm guessing, Michael, you knew well.
Sure. Alan Garton, just so people know, is right now general counsel at the Trump Organization. But during the tenure that I was there, he was just a executive vice president and counsel at the Trump Organization. A good guy and a good lawyer.
Right. So Brad Edwards spoke to reached out, and Alan Garton phoned him up and said, "You don't need to subpoena Donald Trump. He'll happily speak to you next Tuesday." So, and Brad Edwards wrote this was in his book that this was remarkable because none of the other guys, the bold-faced names, the billionaires, whatever, that he was coming after and wanted to speak to, he had to subpoena all of them to get their
What year was that again?
2009. So when Jeffrey Epstein was in jail, he'd done the plea deal, but the problem with the plea deal was that it was done behind the victims' backs. And this was why they were banding together. And so...
You know why, by the way, Vicky, you know why I'm asking you about the year?
No.
Because this is the first time I'm actually hearing about Brad Edwards' name.
Wow.
Or that conversation that took place. And I'm blown away because it would be almost like a rarity that Trump would bring Alan Garton into a scenario like this.
Well,
without my knowledge.
So, Michael, go by all means, go and check the book. I think that for whatever reason, it's possible. You need to see, I think that Brad Edwards, because, why would he have known how he was just literally going down a phone sheet. And it's possible that he just reached out to Alan Garton. He looked at whoever he should speak to at the Trump Organization. Who knows why that happened? But the point is, he did get Trump willingly, happily on the phone. And Trump said to him, I haven't spoken to him in a while. Yes, I was there. I did stand in his house in Mar-a-Lago and look out the window. And I did see a lot of very young looking women, girls.
You mean not at Mar-a-Lago, at Jeffrey Epstein's house? At
Jeffrey Epstein's house. He did. He told Brad Edwards this. And he said he asked, they were sufficiently young looking that he asked Epstein who they were. And Epstein said to Trump that they were part of a mentorship program. And so that, and Brad Edwards writes in his book that, Trump was happy to talk for quite a long time about Jeffrey Epstein and appeared to be very open. Now, Brad Edwards says that he also came as time ticked on and he interviewed more and more survivors and witnesses. He began to realize that historically Trump and Epstein had been closer than Trump had made out. in that phone call once upon a time. But it always struck Brad Edwards as actually fairly interesting that the only well-known guy to have invited him to speak and who didn't want to be subpoenaed and said, don't bother taking my deposition. In other words, the only guy who wasn't hostile to Brad Edwards was Donald Trump. So I think that and then they had a run in around 2015, actually they spoke, I think they came face to face over something completely different, a real estate, legal issue. And Brad Edwards happened to say in passing to Trump, what about this story that you kicked Epstein out, because, why did you kick him out? And Epstein said, and then Trump, I think, sort of said, I can't quite remember the details, and put him on to somebody else at the Trump organization. It wasn't you. I can't remember the name. And then nothing, or someone at Mar-a-Lago, possibly.
It would be Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah. And the trail went cold, according to Edwards.
You ever have one of those nights where your brain just won't shut off? Well, unfortunately, I do. I'm lying in bed, thinking about a million things that I can't control, scrolling my phone, tossing and turning. Sleep, well, feels impossible. That's me until I found IndaCloud. And finally, my mind could actually rest. IndaCloud is your online cannabis dispensary. Gummies, flower, pre-rolls, all federally legal, DEA certified, lab tested, shipped discreet. When your thoughts won't stop, well, at least your brain can. First time I tried IndaCloud, I wasn't trying to escape the world. No, I just wanted one night when my brain could actually relax. And one gummy later, I actually slept instead of staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything all at once. Sleep gummies for quiet in the chaos. Social snacks for when you want to hang with friends without losing your mind. Dispensary grade edibles for when your thoughts won't let up. And $70 ounces because peace of mind shouldn't come with a luxury tax. This is how you unplug without falling behind. Calm brain, world still spinning. Sounds perfect. So if you're 21 or older, go to indacloud.co and use code Cohen for 40% off your first order plus free shipping. That's indacloud.co, indacloud.co, and use code Cohen, Cohen, for 40% off. Free shipping, a quieter break for you. Unsubscribe from one alert, grab ounces instead. Enjoy responsibly, and thanks to IndaCloud for sponsoring today's episode.
So therefore, when I read that email, the one you brought up in the Epstein emails, I did not think, oh, wow, that's incriminating. I thought, oh, yeah, that's what Trump was talking about when he himself talked to the survivors' lawyer. Well, and again, I wasn't that shocked. I mean, I wasn't. I was more surprised to read the email in which Epstein says, yeah, of course, to Michael Wolff, of course, Trump knew about the girls. That wasn't the bit I was shocked about. I'm sure, of course, Trump knew about the girls. But he told Ghislaine to stop. I thought that was very interesting.
I'm glad you bring that email up, because when I read that email, without having the preceding emails before it, stop what? Because again, so many people keep throwing that in my face. Stop what? Stop what? I don't know. How about stop charging shit on the account, considering you're not a member anymore, or stop showing up, or stop trying to get these little girls to sit on my lap. Who knows what stop means? Stop what? And that's why I constantly say, we will know everything when the documents, or if they ever decide maybe instead to do like what they did with Mueller, right? Put out a report or a Durham report in advance, right? So that they can sift through these tens and tens and tens of thousands of documents to do something like that. We don't know what stop was. We just know that if you hate Donald Trump, you can make it the most grotesque email ever. If you are a fan of Donald Trump's, stop charging shit to my account. You
Right.
don't know what it
Right.
means.
We don't know. But I come back to what you though said about, I mean, I doubt that anyone who knew, and this is speculation, I doubt that anyone who really hung around with Jeffrey Epstein had no, in the 1990s, which is far, in 2000 to 2004, which is when I was reporting on him. I doubt anyone who really knew Jeffrey Epstein didn't have some idea of what was going on. And if Trump, and let's assume this is the worst, right? That it is Trump telling Ghislaine Maxwell to stop what she was doing for Jeffrey Epstein. Thank God there was somebody who was telling.
Yeah, but here's the problem with something like that, right? Assuming that he knew and he was telling her to stop, with the trafficking of young kids. I think you do as an adult, forgetting about that he's Donald Trump, forget about the fact that he's now President Trump. You have an obligation to report it. And
right. And
not like 5 years. Right.
No, but and maybe he did. But maybe he did. All of which has had me scratching my head. And bizarrely, and I know this because he's texted me, it's had Brad Edwards, the lawyer for these women, scratching his head, going, why is Trump so stuck on this now? It actually makes no sense at all.
But he's got very bad enablers around him. Let me put it to you that way. It's not like the old crew when we would sit around a table and hash this shit out and figure out the proper way to deal with it. Because if Trump was telling her to stop doing what they were doing, and he did actually go to law enforcement, my God, I would, if I was him, if I was his enabler around him, I'd be having a party in the unconstructed big, beautiful ballroom already, right? I would be having a party there with fucking fireworks and galore, right? We'd be serving caviar, lobster, and Wagyu beef to everybody, to the 42 million Americans that, that are on the Snap. I mean, for God's sakes, it makes him look like
it is such a head scratcher.
Yeah,
and that's why I've been wondering about and also I think Michael, Donald Trump very, very well. I know him, medium well. He's very. I mean, yes, we know that he's had, he's got an eye for models and all the rest of it. We know all that, but he's quite puritanical about things like drink and drugs. And I don't have
cigarettes.
Yeah, and I don't have a hard problem believing that in that same bucket list is children. There's I actually have I have less of a hard time believing that than all the, Yeah,
and I get beaten up for it on a regular basis. But I want to ask you the real question here: did this bill pass because the politics finally changed? Or because Trump's grip on the GOP is starting to slip in a way that we haven't fully appreciated yet?
Well, I think in some ways both things are true, right? Because the fact of the matter is this is his last term in office. And I'm one of those people. I don't believe he will be going for a third term. I do believe that he's very, very focused on his legacy, hence the rush for the ballroom. I mean, that's a very Trumpian thing to do. Mm-hmm. He's creating this, yes, because it's in his style and all the rest of it, but it's because it's going to be now a permanent fixture in the White House, and it's his way of ensuring no one ever forgets the name Donald Trump. And so inevitably, his party, those who want, political survival and who want a long-term political shelf life are going to have to at some point separate themselves from him, because, there's a natural parting of the ways here, because their future is ultimately going to be bound up with some other leader of the Republican Party. And I think that I just think that, as yes, the irony here is that the Democrats have become very fulsome in their noise for wanting release of these trials. But of course, it was Trump's base. But, Trump's base have banged the drum more loudly than anybody else. And so, I have been really puzzled, Michael. I'm really glad when you reached out because, Trump has strengths and weaknesses like all of us. But, I would have said that one of his great strengths is his populist sensibility. He's got a very, it's why he's been so successful with his TV shows. I mean, his ear is normally really well tuned to public sentiment. Yep. And he understands that, fantastically. And I just have been so puzzled by, what seemed to be, this was obviously, it seems
this is an easy one.
It's such a low-hanging fruit, easy political one for him. What is he doing?
Well, he's listening to some of the stupidest enablers that are around there, which kind of brings me to the question that I wanted to ask you. So now that this bill is being brought to his desk, something's getting exposed. What it is, we don't know. All right. Yeah. If he vetoes it, it automatically makes him look guilty and brings negative press on to him that he's even not prepared for. Yeah. Is this the first time that Republicans have intentionally put Trump into a corner? Because to me, it looks like they backed him into a corner.
Well, I think they did. I mean, that's the only reason he changed his mind, right? And we'll have to see what emerges from the files and, if there's anything problematic, who tap dances the way around that and all the rest of it. I mean, I'm sure he was really, really annoyed that all of this went down on the day of MBS's visit. Sure.
So let me ask you this, because we were talking about, for example, power and accountability and so on. Obviously, you saw, I feel almost like Michael Corleone in Godfather 3, which of course was the worst fucking movie, maybe in the history of, that trilogy for sure, but maybe of the whole decade. Just when you get out, they pull me back in. For like 6-7 years now. Yeah, my name is, but nothing of any significant consequence. Yeah, he paid Stormy Daniels. Fuck you. We all know that, right? Blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden now we find out that Representative Stacey Plaskett of the Virgin Islands, where Little St. James, that's Jeffrey Epstein's private island, is texting Jeffrey Epstein during my live congressional hearing before the Oversight Committee, whereby he's feeding her questions. And I don't give a flying fuck what the questions are. That's not even the issue. I personally feel betrayed. I was subpoenaed by, God bless his soul, Representative Elijah Cummings, a truly decent man.
Yeah.
I was subpoenaed to testify. In 2 to 3 weeks from that day, I was self-surrendering on a 3-year sentence to federal prison in Otisville, upstate New York. If you could, when I see myself on television now, while I'm answering the questions from Republicans and Democrats alike, I remember having a hard time breathing, actually praying at times that I would just stop breathing, because the pain that I was living with and going through was too much for anybody to deal with. And while I'm doing that and put myself out there and made myself vulnerable, not just to the actions of what I ended up receiving when I was in Otisville at the hands of people like Bill Barr and the Bureau of Prisons, but put myself out there for the whole world.
Yeah.
And Stacey fucking Plaskett is texting the single worst human being alive about me, about trying to get to get
Yeah,
Trump. And
I did
Hakeem
wonder that.
Jeffries and the leadership refused to even turn around and to say she owes the American people an explanation. Vicky, I need your expertise to understand this because I can't sleep over it. It's really affected me much worse than I thought.
Yeah, well, and I remember, Michael, when you were going through all of that. And I mean, you were very, very stoic in extraordinarily difficult circumstances. But I remember you were so worried about your family.
Sure.
And all of it. So I did wonder when I thought that must be deeply infuriating and frustrating for you to have to read that. But, so here's the hard reality of it, harsh reality, if you want to call it that, which is, this is how soft power works, isn't it? I mean, why is she taking dictation from Jeffrey Epstein? Because he's the richest guy in her constituency. And therefore it's her job, as she sees it, to make him feel important. And this, it's pathetic, but this is how, power operates in the shadows. And I think one of the reasons people are, rightly so wanting to know what really went down with Jeffrey Epstein is because so much of his story is about exactly that little vignette. It is about it's about power in the shadows, power that we suspect operates in private rooms and dark corridors, but we've never seen it. And now through these emails, we're getting to see exactly how it worked. And, and you are the direct, quote unquote, beneficiary, for want of a better word, of one instance of this. And I don't blame you for being absolutely furious.
I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm saying to myself, everybody had to have known what Jeffrey Epstein was about, especially if you were in that circle. Don't tell me that little St. James, which is a small little island in the Virgin Islands, that you have airplanes flying in with a whole bunch of little kids coming off, and then private planes and other people coming, with him with multiple cars, taking him back to the house over there, on Epstein Island and so on, including some insanely famous people that were there on the island, incredibly famous people. Don't tell me that people on Little St. James Island didn't know that there was something really weird going on there. So the question that I would like to ask Stacey Plaskett, number one, how much money did he give you, right, to sell your morality? And number two, did you know, or should you have known what was going on? St. James isn't the size of New York. It's not Texas. It's not California. It's not, Florida, right? It's not even the size of Maine, So let's be real about this for a second, all right? You're going to really tell me that you didn't know? Fine. How much money did he give to you? And what did you do with the money? Because we know you didn't return it. The storyline is that she donated it to women's crisis organizations. I'd like to see the check when it was sent. Don't tell me you sent it last week, right?
Yeah, Michael, I hear you on this. It should be, something, it should be investigated properly.
Yeah. But then you have Hakeem Jeffries looks right into the camera and says, this has nothing to do with her. This is all about it's about our tremendous victory, reopening the government and having, the files now, the victims, it's about getting them justice and so on. He's such a, what's the right word? A typical politician. It's why people don't like him. It's why I'm blown away that he's even in contention to be speaker if the House returns. He would be an ineffective, because He's only thinking about that speakership. He doesn't want to say anything about Stacey Plaskett for fear that it could turn her off and others, and that they won't vote for him if, in fact, that Democrats take back the House. And you know what? That makes him a motherfucker. Now, moving on to my dear friend here, Mohammed bin Salman. All right? Because I know you've covered MBS extensively.
Yeah.
When Trump personally intervenes, literally to stop an ABC reporter from questioning MBS, what does that action actually tell us about the relationship between Trump and the Saudi ruler?
Well, that's a great question.
Listen, unlike Stacey Plaskett, I actually do my homework before I'm going to ask people questions.
Well, I mean, it was very interesting to watch Trump kind of like the mother hen here protecting a child.
Why didn't you protect me like that?
No. And whether or not, and then he said sort of in the same breath or, question later, please don't embarrass our guest as if this was just a dinner party. I thought, wow, what does he want from MBS? Was the headline question in my brain. What does he want from MBS? We know that he wants the Saudis to sign up to the Abraham Accords. We know that MBS is the backbone of his daughter's financial security. And going back to what I said a few minutes ago, I do think that Trump will leave office at the end of this term. And I think, what does Donald Trump care about and understand and value more than anything else in the world? And the answer to that is money. And I think he's determined to leave his kids and the Trump organization financially, very, very, very well.
It's funny that you say that, Vicky, because while I acknowledge money has always been a root cause for Trump, I don't think so in this case. I truly don't. I think this is actually legacy. I really believe that he thinks that he could be remembered, which is why he wants the Nobel Peace Prize so bad. He doesn't just want a Nobel Peace Prize for nuclear physics or DNA reconstruction, right? He wants it for bringing peace to the Middle East, something that for 3,000 years has not been attainable. That's what I think. And I think that somewhere along the line, listen, I think Jared Kushner's an asshole, all right?
But look at what he's accomplished.
But the Abraham Accords is absolutely a fantastic thing for Israel and the entire Middle East. And that includes Saudi Arabia, because they are on the target list of Iran. I mean, the Ayatollah legitimately wants to decapitate the entire Al Saud family as well as the bin Salman family. He wants to take them apart, literally. So now, when you're talking about F-35s, you're talking about U.S. involvement. You're talking about, you're talking about dealing with other Middle Eastern countries to stop the funding of Iran in this negative sort of Islamic terrorism. I could see why Trump is trying to protect. Can I tell you a funny story, by the way? My listeners are going to appreciate this. Many years ago, before working for Trump, I represented one of the sons of the royal family of Saudi Arabia. And really great guy. And the funny thing is, I was doing some work legally for Trump. It was about the year 2005. And I called up Trump's office in 2006, and I said to Rona, by the way, I have Prince so-and-so here. We'd like to stop by. He'd like just to say hi to Mr. Trump. So she goes, give me a second. He goes, of course, he would love to see you, Michael, and of course, the prince. So we come in, and he's handing the prince all sorts of stuff. And invited him at the time, because it was in August, to his box at the U.S. Open. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, huh. Hello. Hello. So he goes, is everything okay? Michael, is everything okay? Would you like a Diet Coke? You want something to drink? Is everything okay? I'm like, wait, you just invited him to your box at the US Open? What am I, look like chopped liver? So he goes, when your father is a prince of a country, I'd be more than happy to invite you to sit next to me in my box as well. And he was dead fucking serious. I mean, he looked me right in the face. You ever put on a shirt and immediately regret your life choices? Well, with True Classic, that doesn't happen. These guys started with one simple idea: premium, comfortable clothing that actually fits without charging a fortune. And you know what? They nailed it. 25 million shirts sold, 5 million happy customers. I'm one of them. Over 200,000 five-star reviews. That, my friends, is not luck. That's a brand doing it right. You see, here's the thing. True Classic isn't just about fabric or fit. It's about confidence, about putting on a shirt that makes you look like you've got your life together, even if, well, let's be honest, you don't. It's effortless, it's clean, it's tailored where it should be, relaxed where it needs to be, and it actually feels good. The material is great. And it's a great gift that actually works. Dads, brothers, partners, friends, now even women and kids. True Classic has everyone covered. I mean, you're giving comfort, style, and confidence, all without bankrupting yourself on some designer label that'll sit in the closet untouched. You see, I've been wearing these shirts for months now. There's no bunching, no stiff cardboard fabric, just a fit that works in real life, at home, at work, or wherever you're pretending to have it all together. So skip the overpriced nonsense. Give comfort, give confidence, give True Classic. And you can find them at Amazon, Target, Costco, Sam's Club, or you can just go straight to trueclassic.com/Cohen and grab the perfect gift for everyone on your list. Again, that's True Classic, trueclassic.com/Cohen. Go there now. So, yeah, Trump, despite the fact that, there is some ideological and some legacy purpose here, Trump does admire authoritarian strongmen. And MBS is an authoritarian strongman.
But I also think, though, Michael, to going back to your point about the Nobel Peace Prize and peace in the Middle East, MBS is strategically very, very, very critical to what Trump would like to pull off. And let's not forget that I think many people suspect that the October 7th attacks happened precisely because it looked as if Saudi Arabia might sign up to the Abraham Accords. I mean, there was an agreement that was not far off from being signed that would have been a precursor. And so I think, and as I understand it, and I've reported this, MBS, if MBS were to agree to do that, he runs the risk of assassination in
not if you have the United States backing you, not if you have the protection of Israel as well, not if you're going to have Jordan and Egypt and you're going to have all of the surrounding territories. By the way, anybody could be assassinated.
I understand, but it's politically, no matter what he might privately want to do, because he's a pragmatist, but politically, it's a problem for him. His people wanted to, that they want a two-state solution. Anything else is not going to work for them.
Well, wait. Before you say that, let's not forget that Israel has all but decimated Palestine. They basically decimated. It's rubble now. There are no standing buildings. Nothing is operational. You have 170 square miles of dirt on the water. I can see Trump bringing in a multilateral party run by, whether it's his Trump Organization children, Mohammed bin Salman,
Right.
the Emir of Qatar, you can have the King
Right.
of Jordan, and so on. And they all take a piece. They all pony up a bunch of money and they start building the place back up, basically, and keeping it called Palestine and returning the Palestinian people, technically becoming a two-state solution because it's no longer operated, for example, by the Palestinian Authority. It will be operated by a multilateral, Muslim-controlled, right, group of countries that will take the AKA of Palestine as the name for the property. I mean, that's what I think they all see here as the only potential play that works for all parties, of course, except for Palestine.
Right. And MBS is open, I think, to anything that economically helps Saudi Arabia. I mean, I think his plan for Neon, I mean, I think that he's in the long term, he's got some economic pressure. So, but all of which, you may, I mean, what you say sounds eminently plausible. But all of which points to the fact that, Trump wants to suck up to MBS big time, which is why he was busy jumping in front of him at the press conference and ticking off the journalists and all, because MBS, his message to MBS is,
I got you.
Yeah. How can we work, how can we work together? Blah, yeah, exactly.
Can I bring up talking about journalists? I've seen Trump do some crazy things in my tenure with him, but Trump calling a reporter on Air Force One as president of the United States, piggy.
Oh,
I mean, you've talked to journalists who've been in that room. I've unfortunately been in a room, but I've never seen him do that.
No.
What's the vibe when a president of the United States resorts to that level of public humiliation?
Well, it's so base and crude. And I'm reminded of something Ivanka once said to me about her father. If you punch him, he'll punch you back. Okay.
10 times, yeah.
But that's okay. But it's the problem is it's very revealing that he perceives what is a fair question as a punch in his face. And so he comes back in this completely inappropriate, primal way. And that's very, I think, startling. I mean, it's startling, right? I mean, you should think about, if you were married, if you said that to your wife, she'd walk out on you, right? I mean, people in the civilized world just don't speak to each other like that. And that's why it's so startling.
So look, the hour, Vicky, the hour goes by really quick. I want to finish with a follow-up question to that, because I feel like I'm a journalist. I'm talking to President Vicky Ward here, right? So my last question to you is, do you see these moments as spontaneous outbursts, or do you think that they're part of some deliberate Trump strategy to delegitimize the press and to intimidate anyone who dares to challenge him on a topic that they know or think that they might think that they know that he doesn't want to discuss?
Well, I think I think both, again, two things can be true at the same time. I think unquestionably this is Trump's knee-jerk response. But I think it's because he prides himself and has been very successful at controlling the narrative. It's what he's really, really, really good at. On his Truth Socials, his tweets when they used to exist, he's really, he knows, and he knows how to yank everyone's attention away from something when the storyline's becoming inconvenient and change the narrative. He knows how to do this in a way that, you know, still has the media, for the most part, on its back foot. Mm-hmm. And I think that what's happened with Jeffrey Epstein is that he has lost control of the narrative, and he is not used to this, and he doesn't like it. And so it's a bit like a baby throwing all the toys out of the pram, as we would say in England. You know, when the toys all go out of it is primitive, because it's what the way he speaks is the way, you know, a child speaks when they haven't got total, you know, control over their words. and so I think that is, you know, both his administrations have been defined by his masterful control of the storyline. I mean, you know, that is what he knows to do.
I lived it.
Anybody
I lived
else.
it.
Yeah,
you know it better than anybody. How many times you and I had spoken over the years, trying to control the narrative, trying to control the story that was coming about?
No, I mean, he's, you know, I mean, and I think that there's something about this Epstein thing that it just annoys the heck out of him. And it's to do with the loss of control of the story from him. And he is not used to that.
Yeah. Well, we will ultimately find out, at least for the most part, what it is that is being protected in these files. But Vicky Ward, my friend, good to see you as always. We have to do one of our lunches soon. I'm sure.
Yes,
I'm sure you have a million questions for me.
I do, Michael. I do. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's always great to chat to you.
It's great seeing you as well. I feel smarter after talking to you.
Likewise.
Thank you, Vicky.